a cell phone, I do want to give you a little bit of background regarding Lieutenant Colonel Alan West, U.S. Army retired, born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia, third of 4 generations of military servicemen. He received his bachelor's degree from the University of Tennessee, master's degree from Kansas State University, both in political science. He, of course, is a big believer in education. He has served in several combat zones, Operation Desert Storm, Operation Iraqi Freedom, was a battalion commander for Army's 4th Infantry Division of Afghanistan, where he trained Afghan officers to take on responsibility of securing their own country. He is an avid distance runner. He's a scuba diver. His wife, Angela, holds an MBA and PhD, works as a financial planner, and they have 2 beautiful daughters, and Alan West has decided to make another commitment to this country by serving us in Washington despite the nature of what goes on in Washington. Colonel West, welcome to the Tammy Brew Show, sir.
Hi, Tammy, and I tell you, it's been too long since I talked to you.
I know. You know, we spoke when you first ran in 2008, and while you did not win that race, another great man did not also win some of his first attempts to serve this nation, that being Ronald Reagan, and you being, I think, very similar to him. Of course, you don't take no for an answer. And I want to thank you for rejoining us as we get into it. I think you'd agree, sir, that 2010 is a little bit different than 2008. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely right. 2010 has a totally different political atmosphere. And even in 2008, in an 8-month campaign, we raised a little over $500,000 with no outside party help, and we finished up with 45.3%. So that was very encouraging, and a lot of people wanted us to come back and run again since they really believe in our principal message of conservative values, and it definitely is right for the times.
Yeah, and of course, running for Florida's 22nd district. What's interesting is 2008 was a really big year, obviously, for the Democrats. You did fabulously well for Florida's 22nd district. And this year is, how does it feel different for you? We know you've got the Sarah Palin endorsement. We know that you are representative of the kinds of individuals who Americans want in Washington. How does this campaign feel different for you? Can you put it into words for us?
Sure. Well, the most important thing is if you have the time. As I said, when you get back from Afghanistan in November of 2007, by the time you really get your machine going, it's only an 8-month campaign. So time is the most important thing. And then I think that when you look at the policies coming out of the Obama administration, you look at what's coming out of Congress, the American people are absolutely fed up. They see this government just becoming more and more intrusive into their lives. This health care bill that was signed into law where the American people did not want it. No one listened to them. It was still rammed down their throats. So they're looking for the type of individuals that coming out of the military understand service, sacrifice, and commitment to this great republic.
Yeah, you know, what's fascinating is in 2008, we were trying to warn people that this is what was going to happen, and now, of course, it has happened. That's a huge difference. And obviously, you're a Republican. How do you identify as a conservative? When people ask you, the districts have been held by a Republican up until Ron Klein, who got swept in with the Democrat revolution, if you will. But it's a pretty moderate district. How do you describe yourself to your constituents there in the 22nd?
Well, the most important thing I tell them is it comes down to 2 critical aspects. It's the fiscal security and the physical security of the people here in Congressional District 22 and the American people. We've got to transfer the wealth of the American people back from the inept, incompetent, and corrupt politicians in Washington, D.C., and get it back to the people where you can have economic growth. Economic growth never has come from the public sector, but yet we see the public sector is the fastest growing part of our economy as opposed to the private sector where investment, ingenuity, and innovation comes from. And then the other thing, I really stress is no matter how prosperous you are, if you're not secure in your physical being, that means nothing. And so when you look at this nuclear summit that the president just had where we're going to take apart, dismantle our nuclear arsenal, which is a deterrent in itself, and then we can't use lexicons such as Islamic terrorism, Muslim extremism, jihadism to define who this enemy is, then we really are confusing ourselves.
So your focus, obviously, and you're absolutely right. None of the luxury issues, as I call them, that we deal with mean anything if you don't have a job, if you're not secure, if you really can't get decent health care because there are no doctors, because the Obama death care plan makes it not reasonable for people to want to become doctors because you'll have $1 million in debt and you won't be able to make a profit ultimately by practicing. When it's going to be tough. What do you imagine when you get to Washington? And this is what we, of course, try to do. They're saying now the Democrats could lose about 100 seats, so we don't think you'll be alone there. But do you think, do you imagine you as a politician and having to compromise, how do you feel you'll do in that kind of an environment?
Well, I'm not concerned with compromise, and I think that I will go there as an American statesman. I have to prove myself as a capable legislator. And I look at one of the critical things we have to do. You know, just last week it came out, 47% of Americans not paying taxes, but yet they vote. So I think we have to really get serious about reforming our progressive tax system, which lends itself to a class warfare between a production class and an entitlement class. So I think one of the critical things we have to tackle is the tax reform. I think the next thing that we have to do is across the board, look at, I say, you take a mark from 1970 to the present and look at all those government agencies and programs that have been created. And first of all, you got to have a 15% across the board cut. Then we start looking at where we can eliminate. But it once again comes back to transferring wealth to the American people. And, when you talk about all of those issues, jobs, health care, and all of those things, they really are economic issues. And if we allow the American people to take care of themselves, they will be able to do that. And once again, job creation does not come from Washington, D.C. It comes from the American citizen. It comes from the private sector. And we have to set the conditions for them to be successful.
Now, when it comes to who's out there now, and I've got a live chat room that's going on over at my blog with people from all over the world chiming in when it comes to questions for you. They like, and they never really hear people talking about being a statesman and the difference in how to approach this. We're used to narcissists and people who spend more of their time gazing at their navel as opposed to gazing at the Constitution, and they're really excited about it. Rubigonia wants to know, Lieutenant Colonel Alan West, how often do you field questions about race from the press? And how do they try to deter you from the issues using the race card? Does that happen a lot, or do you think we're beyond that a bit, or is that a factor for you with the media especially?
Well, I think the most important aspect is that the liberal progressives on the left tried to introduce the race issue as a means to get people to shut down and not criticize this administration. But, I was born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia. Just happened the Ebenezer Baptist Church and Dr. Martin Luther King's tomb was right across the street from my elementary school, Our Lady of Lourdes. And so I was very familiar with Dr. King's message. And the most important part of that message was about, a country where it was about, people being judged by the content of their character, not the color of their skin. And I think that's what people see in me. Now, as a matter of fact, I've been called Oreo, Uncle Tom, I've been called token, sellout. The N-word has been used to describe me, but that's coming from the black community. Because for whatever reason, the black community is very afraid of those of us that have escaped the 21st century plantation, as I call it. And we are able to think independently on our own. We are able to understand principles over the mindless, lemming-like following of a certain political party or ideology, which I look at the Democrats now as dishonest tyranny. When they sit around and say they're doing these things for the best for you, but really it's just an enabler for them to enslave the human will and the human mind. Well, once upon a time, the Democratic Party enslaved the human body. So, yes, race does come in because people want to know how is it that you can be from the South, be from the inner city, but yet you don't follow along, the same line as folks in the Congressional Black Caucus. It's because,
Well, one of my speeches is why conservative ideals especially improve the quality of lives for minorities, whether it's any of us who have been traditionally kept out of the power scheme, that would be women, people of color, and gays and lesbians, is that it is the conservative ideal that when we have our own money, when we're not looking for a check from someone, that we can then choose to live the lives that best suit us, that we are not answerable to someone else, that we don't have somebody else telling us where we can live or where we can send our kids to school or the kind of home we can have, and that especially for minorities, those of us who don't necessarily have